Here we go again.
Oh, no, not again.
You've seen it before, haven't you?
Dom, how long have we been doing this?
Once more unto the breach, dear friends.
Again and again and again until we're both dead.
Hello and welcome to You've Seen It Before, movie reviews and connections in mind. Terminator Dark Fate is the sixth film in the Terminator franchise, starting all the way back with the original Terminator from 1984. This film takes place after the events of the original Terminator and Terminator 2 Judgment Day from 1991, I believe that movie came out. This movie ignores the continuity established hereafter from the films Terminator Rise of the Machines, Terminator Salvation, and Terminator Genesis. Those have been described as happening in alternate timelines by producer James Cameron. This film focuses on, once again, the machines from the future have sent a Terminator back in time to kill a young woman, this time played by Mackenzie Davis. And in over her head, she has to find a way to survive this Terminator with the help of another human from the future, played by Natalia Reyes, and with returning stars Linda Hamilton as old Sarah Connor, and the T-800 Terminator, played once again by Arnold Schwarzenegger. This review will contain spoilers of Terminator Dark Fate after I give my initial spoiler-free review of the film, as well as other films as well. There will be a full list in the description below. So if you've not seen Terminator Dark Fate yet, or any of the films listed below, and want to wait until you have, once I give my second spoiler warning after my spoiler-free review, I'll give another spoiler warning. Feel free to tune out after that, and skip to the very end if you want. But with all that being said, without further ado, let's get into my spoiler-free thoughts on Terminator Dark Fate. Is it a good movie overall? Is it a good Terminator movie? Is it worth you seeing it in theaters? I would say this is, it's been bandied about by the media that this is the best Terminator sequel since T2. I would have to agree, but given that all the other sequels have been varying degrees of terrible, it is a step up, but in the line graph that is quality of Terminator films, if Terminator, the original Terminator is right here, T2 is up here, T3 I would say is a little bit lower than the original one, it's a definite step down. Rise of the Machines, Terminator Salvation would be about the same as T3. Terminator Genesis was a step down, and then this one I would say is a step up, but it never quite manages to even match the original Terminator in terms of quality, I would say. This is just a relatively average film. As far as Terminator films go, you have all the same tropes. You have someone in danger, you have a bad Terminator coming to get you, you have a human who is trying to protect you, and ever since T2, you have a good Terminator. Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator is now good in all the other films after this, at least that take place after T2. This film is it just feels average. I feel like this film's greatest strengths lie in the fact that it doesn't get too bogged down in the world building of the Terminator franchise. I would say that a lot of the sequel's biggest downfalls has been to, this isn't a word, but glorify the Terminator franchise, just get bogged down in all these interconnected points and how it connects even within movies and how it connects to T1 and T2, considered still the best Terminator films out there. Then this one knows enough not to go down that path, and it knows just enough to say, hey, this is the framework we're going on. You know this framework. Let's just go into this. Like, I think the action really gets started within the first, I would say, 10-ish minutes. Like, it gets going really quickly, and it knows enough not to get bought. And even when they're going on and on about this, it knows enough not to get too deep into the motivations of the machines, like how exactly do the Terminators work, why this person in particular, and how they're connected to everyone else in the franchise. It knows enough not to go down that far. I mean, there are certain things I can't say without spoiling anything, that it does kind of go down, and it definitely walks up to that line of going too far, but I would say it doesn't go too far. The action in this movie, I would say, is competently filmed and staged. It doesn't have a whole lot of shaky cam, which is good, but it's nothing particularly special. And if you've seen all the other Terminator films, there's nothing really new about this. I think this was revealed in the trailer, so I can safely talk about this aspect without going into spoilers. The new Terminator, which in this movie is called the Rev 9, played by Gabriel Luna. I like Gabriel Luna as a guy with he's essentially playing the same role as his role in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. when he was Ghost Rider. I loved him as Ghost Rider, as he was a kind of mild-mannered man a guy who he acts somewhat tough, but he hides a much darker power underneath that comes out and kills a whole bunch of people. He's playing essentially that same role again as a new Terminator, but he has a couple of things working against him. One, I feel like this movie, as far as designs of Terminators go, it essentially combines. His design is essentially a T-800 Terminator skeleton with a nanite Terminator exterior that is the human form, the one that it looks like Gabriel Luna. And it's essentially the T-800 and the T-1000, played by young Arnold Schwarzenegger and Robert Patrick, combined, at least power-wise and look-wise. And that's a disadvantage for Luna because Arnold Schwarzenegger has the advantage of being Arnold Schwarzenegger. He looks like he will kill you even without being a murder bot. And when he asks you things, he has that intimidation factor on him. Robert Patrick, as the T-1000, he's not necessarily physicality, but he's very unnerving in his humanoid form as Robert Patrick. And when you see him just walking around interacting with people, you know what he's capable of, even when he's not like shape-shifting and terminating, and you feel unnerved by just being around him. And he has that way that his face looks and how they shoot him, and he has that intimidation factor on that. Gabriel Luna, he worked better as Ghost Rider because his more or less innocent nature and charm that he had as Robbie Reyes in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., that worked because it belied the underlying awesomeness and fear-generating power that is the Ghost Rider, the Spirit of Vengeance. Here, as a Terminator, he's trying to be a charming Terminator, but he doesn't have that intimidation factor, and I feel like that hurts his performance as a Terminator, and it's not necessarily his fault, but that's just a disadvantage going in, knowing that it's essentially the T-800 and T-1000 rolled into one, and he can't really be either. He can't live up to either of those two guys. No Terminator that they've put out since the T1 and T2 has had that same intimidation factor as those guys. So I think that's one of the film's big disadvantages. Like I said, I love Gabriel Luna as Ghost Rider in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but I think he was not necessarily the best. It didn't work as well as I think they thought it would here. But other than that, I thought the casting worked really well. Natalia Reyes as Grace, the human that got sent back in time, did a really good job in her character. The new our main woman who is being hunted by the Terminators, Danny, played by Mackenzie Davis, I thought that she did a really good job as well. There was really only one shot at the very end that I thought that it just looked like a weird shot of her. But other than that, I think she did a really good job in her role. And the return of Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton, they utilized her really well, I thought. And again, in the trailers, they show that that old man Arnold Schwarzenegger is back, and I thought they used him well. And unlike Terminator Genesis, they didn't overuse him and put him in situations where that he didn't work. So I thought they did a good enough job with him in this role. But overall, I would say this film is it's average. It's not aggressively horrible, and it's not like it does not meet the high bar that the original Terminator and Terminator 2 set. So overall, even if this was an okay movie, that's just it. It's kind of an okay movie. And for a Terminator film, that's just kind of, that feels like a failure, even though it's not aggressively bad. It's just there. And I don't think this is going to be particularly memorable going forward. And I think that's a bit of a shame for the franchise, because I think they seed elements in this that could work, but it just doesn't really work out really well. So maybe this makes up enough money so that they can fix some of these flaws in another movie going down the road. But I would say it's worth checking out in theaters if you're a fan of the Terminator franchise, but only if you set your expectations appropriately. Nothing's ever going to match T1 and T2. So, but it is better than the other sequels that we've had film-wise. So if I was going to give this a letter grade, I would say this is a solid B- to a B. It's not bad enough to say it's a C. I'd say it's better than a C, but it's not at A level. And yeah, I would say B- to a B in that range is where I would place this. So those are my spoiler-free thoughts of Terminator Dark Fate. Now here's the time where I move into some spoiler-filled analysis of the film as far as certain plot developments and character arcs from this film that may have seemed familiar to you and where you may have seen them before. So moving forward, I would say some parallels that I drew is while this film is essentially a retread of T2 from the standpoint of we have the young person who is being hunted by a Terminator, and they have a good cybernetically enhanced human this time, but let's just call her essentially what she acts like in the story, a good Terminator, protecting this woman, and the old, the more warrior stature Sarah Connor protecting this person as well. And we have to stop this bad Terminator from killing the young person in question. So it's essentially a retread of Terminator 2, but also I could point to this trope being used in films such as Logan, where Logan also featured a young woman who has to get over a border, much like Danny had to cross the Mexican border into the US in this film. And she has an older protector who has to face off against a younger version of himself, much like how old Arnold Schwarzenegger T-800 has to face off against the younger, newer Rev 9 Terminator. So we have that going on. So we have that connection. Also, we have this trope of a plot twist where the hero is someone who has been essentially fated to become a leader among the people, but this person doesn't know that they're the leader, but they eventually realize it by the end, and then at that point they become their fate, even though they've been trying to avoid it all this time, or they've never realized it until the very end. This trope has been used a whole bunch of times in movies, but the one that the more fun example that I came up with was Kung Fu Panda. Stick with me on this. Both films have our heroes, namely Danny in Terminator Dark Fate and Po in Kung Fu Panda. They've been fated to become a new commander or whatever, a leader of sorts. Danny being the leader of the human resistance in the future, Po being the dragon warrior. Both have been fated to this, but they've been thrust into this unexpectedly. They didn't know that they were going to be this. And for most of the movie, they act as if they're trying to become it, but they feel like they don't have the strength to do it. But then her sacrifice by their mentor figure or their protector, namely Grace in Terminator Dark Fate, and Dustin Hoffman's character, I just forgot his name, in in Kung Fu Panda, and that sacrifice motivates our heroes to become the thing that they were fated to become in the first place. They find the inner strength within them. Danny finds the strength to become the warrior that the future her had. Poe eventually becomes the Dragon Warrior. So we have that trope played out in both of these films. Like I said, there are other films that have done this trope, but that was just a more fun example that I thought up of. So those are my main points of comparison with Terminator Dark Fate with other films that come before it. So real quick, just some spoiler-filled points of contention that I had with this film. I thought that I was kind of excited about the rumors that Edward Furlong was going to come back and be a part of this somehow. I thought that scene in the beginning where they used him, or like the digital de-aged CGI version of young Edward Furlong, looked good, and as well as they presumably de-aged Linda Hamilton looked good as well. But I thought that was kind of a waste of the potential of that idea of him coming back into the franchise. That would have been cool, but unfortunately they didn't go that route, and so I thought that was sort of a waste. And I don't object to Mackenzie Davis's character becoming the new face of the Terminator franchise, but I thought that could have been a little more subtle with how at the end when Sarah Connor throws Danny the keys to the Jeep, and at the very end it's like, yes, we know what you're doing. So I mean, they could have just been a little more subtle in that route, but I mean, those are just minor quibbles. Overall, I would say I enjoyed myself for the most part, like I said before. But yeah, this is a very average movie, and I don't think it'll be particularly memorable. So those are my thoughts on Terminator Dark Fate. Let me know what you thought of the movie in the comments down below. Did you like it? Did you not like it? What about my analysis? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Did I miss something? I probably missed something. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate whatever audience I can get. I appreciate that I have subscribers in the double digits. It's such a small benchmark, but it's an important benchmark for me. And it gives me some sort of platform that whether it be only a handful of views or more, depending on the video. And if I appreciate whatever views I get as well, and I want to pay that forward by just giving a shout out to a friend of mine who he doesn't have much of a platform anyway. My friend Sam and his channel Jesus Lover 24. Just go to that, and he's a cool dude. He does some fun videos. Just check him out if you like that sort of thing. Tell him I sent you. It'll be fine. He knows me. He knows I'm doing this. So give him a shout out. And if you like anything you see on my channel, be it this video or any other video on my channel, please give me a like, share, and subscribe. I'd very much appreciate it. Be sure to look for my next movie review, which will be for Midway, which will be coming out November 8th, if I read the calendar correctly. Yeah, be sure to look for that. And again, I thank you so much for watching. I appreciate my audience, but just remember, there is nothing new under the sun. And yes, you have seen it before.